confident countries invest in themselves. They either say investing in Canadians is a waste of money, or that our policies are too woke. Too woke? Hey, Pierre Poilievre, it's time for you to wake up.
Welcome back to Power Play. Liberal Party members are gathering in we speak in this city, in the nation's capital, for their annual convention. They're set to hear in about an hour's time from former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. And then after that, they'll hear from the former Secretary of State in the U.S., Hillary Clinton. She'll be in some sort of armchair conversation with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. Let's talk a little bit about the Prime Minister's speech, though, last night and the way in which he addressed party faithful, if he kind of rouse them up. Let's bring back the front bench panel to do just that. Carleen Varayan, Jason Leader, Bizan Subi, and Rachel Ayalo. Bizan, I'll start with you. What do you think the aim of the Prime Minister's speech last night was? Is it to rouse up the base, or was it to speak more broadly to Canadians?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm the kind of person that I struggle with, scenes in movies where somebody makes that big declaration. And so I've always kind of had a little bit of trouble with Trudeau's delivery style. And I just thought that the whole speech, considering that is his party faithful, a lot of first timers was something else that I heard. So, a lot of people who should be really amped and excited and energized. And that was kind of their reaction. So I don't think it really landed in person. And just from a if I'm Pierre Poilievre, for example, that line was a little bit honestly painful for me to hear. I didn't think it landed really well. I don't think it landed with either a good sense of humor or with a sense of a threat or any kind of thing that would, I think alarm anybody else. So it just kind of seemed a little bit the tone didn't really hit exactly where he had intended for it to. I think that there was also that line about populism, about he just has an on-again, off-again relationship with populism that's confusing, I think. And so if it was meant for outside audiences, I don't think it connected. And just by the, audience reception, I don't know that it connected with the party faithful as well.
It did. I was in the room for it, Jason, and Rachel was there with me as well. I think the lines on Poilievre did land, but I think the bigger question is that enough to motivate people in his party to do the work they're going to need to do in the lead up to the next federal election campaign, whenever that may be?
I mean, and by the way, just poor Bizan. I mean, listen, your party's supporting these guys. Did you guys get did you guys get a discount on Liberal tickets to the Liberal convention? Did Singh want to introduce him? I mean, he's his vice president, for goodness sake.
I did not see any NDPers. Maybe one, Alexander Villeruiz, but I think just representing them there to listen in. But yeah.
I thought the Liberals who were in the room, the ones that I've talked to, got pretty excited about it because they're desperate for him to do well, right? I mean, he's not doing well. Let's be honest, right? He got 31% in the last two election campaigns. He's hanging on by a thread. I'm not saying this is the end of him. He's a political, he's a colossus in Canada in terms of political success. He's probably, he's got one more really good run at him. They hope that he's got one more really good run in him. But I'll just say this: if you weren't a dyed-in-the-wool Liberal, if you're a person that's been skeptical about Justin Trudeau, and that's about 69 to 70% of Canadians these days, you probably didn't see what you wanted to see there. He's firing up the base for sure, and he's trying to, sort of change the channel from a pretty tired government to the things that he wants to talk about. So, Mr. Poilievre, he's his chief rival. I will say too, though, Mr. Trudeau, when you think about Mr. Trudeau at his best, if you take your partisan hat off and you look objectively, when was this guy at his best? Well, 2015 was his best campaign by a long shot. And if you think about what Mr. Trudeau looked like in 2015, sunny ways Trudeau, sort of looked, sort of full of panache, wandering around the stage, a lav mic, people just on top of him, Trudeau mania. That stilted, weird delivery that Bizan was just talking about, I got to say, I don't even recognize the guy anymore. Now, that might be enough to win, and it might be enough to fire up dyed-in-the-wool Liberals, but I got to tell you, I think if you're a regular Canadian and you're sort of growing tired of him, you might want to say, hey, dude, maybe handle this China stuff rather than, spit out the cool applause lines.
Carleen, do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think he's up sort of against this relative comparison to 2015 when he hadn't been in government for 8 years and people didn't have a record to judge him on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have to disagree with Jason in terms of, he's not doing well. Whether you like it or not, politics is a pass-fail exam. The last 3 elections, this guy has won. He has been elected prime minister, whether you like it or not. I think there were a lot of moments in that speech that did land really, really well in the room. That's certainly what I've heard from convention attendees, despite, that clip and how that, whether or not that particular one
they
landed,
did,
but
they
even
did.
that
Clip did land. That's why we used it. People got excited every time Pierre Poilievre's name was invoked, basically.
Well, the crowd and the prime minister, what I took away from watching that was this is someone who is chomping at the bit to get back out into another election campaign. I think if there were any remaining doubts about whether this leader is sticking around for another campaign, those were washed away last night. And he was back at his best, which is when he is fired up and ready to go and to take on an opponent. I think he did a fairly decent job of staking out how we will see him draw the battle lines between himself and Pierre Poilievre in the next campaign, which is, we have spent the last 8 years since 2015 trying to build this country up. Pierre Poilievre wants to tear it down. He talked about this brokenist conservative attitude of, Canada's broken, and used a couple policy points to kind of highlight it. But I think he certainly did what he needed to do, because the excitement over at the convention center, just a few hundred yards away from here, is at a fever pitch. There are 5,000 people who've come into the city, and these are the people who the party has to rely on to donate money, knock on doors, volunteer in the next campaign, and I think they got what they needed.
The contrast that he drew, Rachel, frequently with Pierre Poilievre, as Carleen points out, certainly did rile up the base, but there wasn't a lot about beyond there's more to do, here's what I am going to do. Is that because of the venue, or is that a missing piece?
Well, I think it's kind of, to take Carleen's point, if he's chomping at the bit to get to the next election, sure, but not right now, because there is still a lot of work that the Liberals have to accomplish in order to be able to credibly go to the electorate again and say, look at all the things that we have now delivered. You want more, vote me back. If it's just another, we still need more time to do the things we promised to do in 2019, I'm not sure that's going to be a convincing argument. But I think what he did focus on there, Vashi, talking about assault-style weapons and women's rights, like those are really the issues that we heard in the room get everyone riled up, and very American-style kind of emotional social issues. And I think when we think about Clinton being there tonight, that kind of clicks for me and kind of trying to draw those parallels, perhaps.